Hello, friend. Welcome back to Foul Play. When an enticing lead appears in one of America's most infamous unsolved serial killer cases, it's like a siren calling for an adventurous investigative journalist. Paul Avery was a seasoned reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle. He had written extensively on the Zodiac case. On October 27, 1970, after covering the mysterious and elusive killer across the Bay Area, the game then changed. Avery found himself under the watchful gaze of the self-proclaimed Zodiac. A Halloween postcard bearing Paul Avery's name showed a haunting depiction of a skeletal figure with a pumpkin for a torso. The card bore the inscription, "From your secret pal," accompanied by the words, "I feel it in my bones. You ache to know my name, and so I'll clue you in." To the left of the skeleton, the word "slaves" was handwritten horizontally in eerie capital letters. Vertical letters, also in capitals, spell out the word paradise with a letter C instead of an S. The Zodiac's trademark misspelling of the word was in keeping with his earlier communications. Within each corner, the Zodiac had written, "By fire, by knife, by gun, and by rope." On the reverse of the card was another skeleton. This one is jovial and dancing. Shapes that looked like eyes were dotted all around. The word "boo" jumped out in bold, white lettering. A number 4, followed by the word "teen," written all around the skull of the skeleton, was equally large in bold lettering. Zodiac symbols decorated the bottom right corner of the card, but the most sinister message, the one that caused the most concern, sat quietly in the top left corner. Written in a teardrop-shaped circle were words taken with a direct threat to Paul Avery's life. They read, "Peekaboo, you are doomed." The Zodiac, it seemed, had set his sights firmly on this experienced journalist. If Paul Avery was worried, he didn't want to show it publicly.
I really don't feel I am. I think that the Zodiac is just making an idle threat, frankly. He has bragged of killing up to possibly 14 people, but there's absolutely no evidence that he's killed more than 5. I put no credence in this. I think he just wanted to get himself a little publicity.
You thought maybe things were dying down a bit as far as he was concerned?
Well, I think with the killings that have gone on in this area in recent weeks that have created very big headlines, that possibly he's a little miffed. He's not the center of attention anymore.
What kind of a person do you think the Zodiac is?
Well, obviously a very sick person. He's very cunning too. He's not a brilliant man, but he certainly isn't dumb. I think he's got a kind of a shrewd animal cunning to him, and of course there is a great sickness in there that prompts him to go out and kill.
Don't you think you're going to start looking over your shoulder once in a while now?
Oh, very definitely. As I say, I think it's an idle threat, but at the same time, I'm no fool. I'm going to be very careful. There was a conference with the police department and a discussion of possible police protection for me. It was finally decided that this, at this time at least, is unwarranted. If somebody takes a shot at me, that'll be a different case. But at this point, there's no need. We don't feel any need for protection.
The Chronicle ran an article within days that included the postcard. It received worldwide attention. The Zodiac Killer had just propelled himself into a global attraction. In the days after the article went to press, Paul Avery received a letter. A man in Northern California was convinced the murderer of a teenager in the city of Riverside in 1966 was the haunting work of the Zodiac. He wanted Paul Avery to investigate.
In 1966, the Beatles' iconic album Revolver was released to adoring fans. The films Star Trek and Batman made their debut in cinemas to worldwide acclaim. It was a year of excitement and new experiences, for teenagers especially, who were just easing their way into adulthood. Nestled around 50 miles from Los Angeles, Riverside emerges as the 12th largest city in California. It was home to a thriving University of California campus. One of their students that year was 18-year-old Cheri Josephine Bates. Cheri Jo lived with her father just a 10-minute drive from the college. She was a lovable teenager. With dreams of becoming an air stewardess, she balanced her studies with part-time work at a local riverside bank. Determined to achieve independence, she saved to buy her prized possession, a light green Volkswagen Beetle. Cheri Jo had been dating a boy called Dennis for 2 years. On the weekend of October the 22nd, the couple had become engaged to be married when she visited him in San Francisco. Her life was a source of envy for many. The following Sunday, now back into her studies, Cheri Jo was eager to get to go to the college library. She phoned her friend twice that afternoon to see if she could join her, but her friend wasn't able to. After writing a quick note to her father to say where she had gone, she got into her VW and set off for the short drive. Not long after 6 p.m, when the library opened its doors, Cheri Jo parked her Beetle a few hundred meters away from the main entrance. 4 young men were talking directly across the street and remember watching her leave her car. She was then spotted heading into the library by an acquaintance just before 6:15 p.m. This detailed account of her day abruptly halts at 6:15 that evening. Despite almost 60 people being in the library that night, not one remembers seeing or talking to Cheri Jo. Early the next morning, her father, Joseph Bates, discovered his daughter was still not home. He filed a missing persons report at 5:43 a.m. A little over an hour later, the college groundsman made a grim discovery. Cheri Jo's lifeless body lay on the ground of a dirt driveway at 3680 Terracing Street. Part of the college campus, it was an area between 2 vacant houses undergoing renovation. The college library was just 100 yards away. Cheri Jo had been viciously stabbed and beaten. Her life cruelly ended before any of her dreams could be fulfilled. She was fully clothed with her sandals still on her feet. Her purse was lying awkwardly beneath her. There was evidence of a struggle around where she lay. The dirt was disturbed in different directions and footprints were scattered around the area. As the crime scene was processed, officers discovered her VW Beetle. The windows were rolled down. 3 library books checked out the previous night lay on the front passenger seat. The vehicle keys dangled silently from the ignition. Cheri Jo was a conscientious young woman. To leave her vehicle unsecured like this was highly unusual and out of character. When officers looked closer, they found the engine had been disabled. The normally pristine bodywork was now marked with greasy fingerprints. A wire from the distributor had been pulled out, rendering the car immobile. If Cheri Jo had returned to this vehicle, she would not have been able to get the engine started. Immediately, detectives thought her vehicle may have been tampered with, that it was her killer who disabled the engine to possibly give him a ruse to approach her and offer help. Her kind and generous nature would have gratefully accepted having no way to know her life was in terrible danger.
Attention, friends. Are you ready to embark on a journey into the unknown this Mother's Day? Prepare to dive into the depths of your family's history with mylifeinabook.com. Each week, mylifeinabook.com sends intriguing questions, uncovering the thrilling tales of your mom's past, and then she can either type her response or use their voice-to-text feature. From daring escapes to nail-biting encounters, her life becomes an epic adventure waiting to be explored. This Mother's Day, give the gift of excitement and intrigue with mylifeinabook.com. It's a thrilling ride through your mom's life that you won't want to miss. I gave this to my mom last year, and let's just say I didn't know my mom as well as I thought I did. Check out mylifeinabook.com and use code Shane at checkout for 10% off. Create an unforgettable gift for your mom this Mother's Day. That's mylifeinabook.com and use code Shane for 10% off today. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Let's dissect the situation, shall we? My social battery's been running low lately, fueled by the insatiable curiosity of foul play listeners. But amidst the thrill of investigation, it's crucial to take a step back and prioritize our mental well-being. Just like analyzing evidence in a case, therapy can provide clarity and perspective. It's about understanding yourself on a deeper level and learning how to navigate life's complexities with confidence. Thinking about therapy, BetterHelp offers a virtual toolbox for self-discovery. It's flexible, convenient, and tailored to your needs, allowing you to explore your thoughts and feelings from the comfort of your home. Find your social sweet spot with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/foul today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/foul, FOUL. At the crime scene, a small, cheap Timex watch was found around 10 feet from Cheri Jo's body. Detectives considered the watch strap had most likely broken in the struggle. The watch had been worn by a person with a 7-inch wrist, and it did not belong to Cheri Jo. Heel prints could be seen on the ground, surrounding where Cheri Jo lay. After a process of elimination, those unaccounted for were prints of size 8 to 10 and appeared to be a military-style boot. No one saw what happened to Cheri Jo that night in the dark driveway. From around 10:15 p.m. to 10:30 p.m., residents who lived nearby reported hearing a woman scream, followed by a quieter, more muffled scream, and then stony silence. A few minutes later, they heard an engine starting and a vehicle driving away. This was a key development for the investigation team. It was unlikely to be a coincidence, considering the proximity of their properties and the crime scene. Cheri Jo's autopsy was carried out in Arlington, 7 miles from Riverside. It revealed the shocking extent of her injuries. Multiple cuts, abrasions, and bruises were noted on her face, forehead, chest, and arms. Extensive wounds to her neck completely cut through the carotid artery on her right side and both her jugular veins. There was no evidence of sexual assault. The weapon used to attack Cheri Jo was believed to be a knife around 3.5 inches long. She fought fiercely for her life, and the vicious assault left her no chance of survival. She died quickly due to the wounds on her neck and the rapid blood loss they caused. In the palm of Cheri's hand, at the base of her right thumb, were hairs that were taken as evidence during her autopsy. Those hairs were not Cheri Jo's, suggesting they were likely torn from her killer's head during her final desperate struggle for life.
Riverside police concluded a full reconstruction of the night Cheri Jo was killed. They asked everyone in the area on that night to return wearing the same clothes, driving the same vehicles, and parking in the same spots. The reconstruction did not produce the leads that detectives had hoped for. Cheri Jo's killer remained in the shadows. Paul Avery flew to Riverside in the days after receiving the letter highlighting Cheri Jo's case. While there, he worked with Riverside detectives and examined all the evidence in attempts to discover for himself any viable connections to the Zodiac Killer. Almost 1 month after Cheri Jo's murder, on November the 29th, 1966, carbon copies of a neatly typed letter had been mailed to Riverside Police and Riverside Enterprise local press office. It was a graphic letter confessing to a brutal murder. The tone of the writing was that of a taunting voice, proud of their actions and keen to share their activities.
The confession by blank. She was young and beautiful, but now she's battered and dead. She is not the first, and she will not be the last. I lay awake nights thinking about my next victim. Maybe she will be the beautiful blonde that babysits near the little store and walks down the dark alley each evening about 7. Or maybe she'll be the shapely blue-eyed Barnett that said no when I asked her for a date in high school. But maybe it will not be either. But I shall cut off her female parts and deposit them for the whole city to see. So don't make it easy for me. Keep your sisters, daughters, and wife off the street and alleys. Miss Bates was stupid. She went to the slaughter like a lamb. She did not put up a struggle, but I did. It was a ball. I first pulled the middle wire from the distributor. Then I waited for her in the library and followed her out after about 2 minutes. The battery must have been about dead. By then I offered to help. She was then very willing to talk to me. I told her that my car was down the street and that I would give her a lift home. When we were away from the library walking, I said it was about time. She asked me, about time for what? I said it was about time for her to die. I grabbed her around the neck with me, hand over her mouth, and my other hand with a small knife at her throat. She went very willingly. Her breast felt very warm and firm under my hands, but only one thing was on my mind: making her pay for the brush-offs that she had given me during the years prior. She died hard. She squirmed and shook as I choked her, and her lips twitched. She let out a scream once, and I kicked her head to shut her up. I plunged the knife into her, and it broke. I then finished the job by cutting her throat. I'm not sick. I'm insane. But that will not stop the game. This letter should be published for all to read it. It just might save that girl in the alley. But that's up to you. It will be on your conscience, not mine. Yes, I did make that call to you also. It was just a warning. Beware. I am stalking your girls now. CC Chief of Police, Enterprise.
The writings, however, didn't stop there. A month later, in December 1966, a disturbing poem was found scratched deep into a desk in the Riverside City College Library. Its contents were macabre and designed to shock. Underneath, almost as a signature, were 2 single letters, R.H. The poem's meaning was ambiguous, and the time of writing impossible to date. Yet the discovery so close to Cheri Jo's murder was chilling.
Sick of living, unwilling to die. Cut. Clean. If read, clean. Blood spurting. Dripping. Spilling. All over her new dress. Oh well, it was red anyway. Life draining into an uncertain death. She won't die. This time, someone will find her. Just wait till next time.
As detectives continued to work the case, the weeks quickly turned into months. The Riverside Police believed their killer had written the typed confession letter they had received in the month after the murder. There would be more to come. In March 1967, 6 months after Cheri Jo lost her life, 3 almost identical handwritten notes were sent to the Riverside Police Department, the Riverside Press Enterprise newspaper, and to Cheri Jo Bates' father. 2 contained the same short, cruel words.
Bates had to die. There will be more.
The third read,
She had to die. There will be more.
At the bottom of each haunting note was what appeared to be a small letter Z. In recent years, it has been uncovered that these short handwritten letters were a cruel hoax. A discovery which further prompted Riverside Police to follow their initial instincts on a local killer and a single person of interest. Listen to our bonus episode over on Patreon for more details.
From early in the investigation, the Riverside Police believed Cheri Jo knew her killer. They have never been convinced that Cheri Jo was killed by the Zodiac. The typed confession letter gave details that had not been released to the public. The letter also gave a motive for her murder: rejection from Cheri Jo in the years before her death. In the eyes of the Riverside detectives, a web of suspicion has always surrounded one prime suspect. Given the pseudonym Bob Barnett by a leading Zodiac researcher, he has never been arrested or officially charged with any crime. Bob's connection to Cheri Jo in a series of suspicious incidents have, however, long kept him under scrutiny. Witnesses reported that Cheri Jo and Barnett were in a relationship. There were also references to Barnett in Cheri Jo's diary across 1965. The witnesses claimed that Cheri Jo broke up with him after accepting her boyfriend's marriage proposal, leading to a public argument and Barnett allegedly slapping her. A suspicious encounter was also reported by a passerby near the crime scene on the night Cheri Jo was killed. They described a male figure matching Barnett's description in the clothing he was wearing that night in the area within the sight of Cheri's Volkswagen Beetle. Witness accounts of 2 men with flashlights near the scene in the early hours of that morning suggested the possibility of an accomplice, focusing attention on Barnett's associates. There was, however, no evidence that could prove Bob Barnett as Cheri Jo's killer. He has denied ever having a relationship with Cheri Jo or laying a hand on her. In 1998, after a warrant was obtained by Riverside Police, Barnett gave samples of his skin, hair, and saliva for comparison testing. There was conclusively no match to any evidence at Cheri Jo's murder scene, and he was not the owner of the hair found in Cheri Jo's hand.
By the time Paul Avery had finished reviewing the letters received after Cheri Jo's murder, he was convinced this was the work of the Zodiac Killer. He persuaded Captain Cross and Sergeant Bonney of the Riverside Police to reopen the investigation into her murder and link it officially with the Zodiac. On November the 16th, 1970, Paul Avery published an article in the San Francisco Chronicle titled, "New Evidence in Zodiac Killings Are Linked to Murder in Riverside." He detailed the murder of Cheri Jo Bates and the confessions and notes that came in afterwards, describing possible links to the Zodiac Killer. On the same day, Department of Justice documents examiner Sherwood Morrill stated the letters and the poem were all written by the same hand. In his opinion, they match the earliest known letters of the Zodiac. 3 months later, true to style, Zodiac raised his head. He chose a new recipient this time for his neatly handwritten letter. The Los Angeles Times received a letter postmarked March the 22nd, 1971. The Zodiac had reached heights of grandeur. He bragged how he was crack-proof and gave police credit for discovering what he called his activity in Riverside. It would appear the Zodiac had just claimed responsibility for the killing of Cheri Jo Bates. The letter to the LA Times would not be the only communication to come from the Zodiac in March 1971. A second mailing was a cryptic postcard hinting at a 12th victim and a hidden crime location, leaving behind a cloak of uncertainty. It was a suggestion under a thick layer of mystery. The Zodiac had raised the stakes once again.